Hi, I'm Dave Kale. Welcome to this Christian Business Insights podcast show where my goal is to provide you with practical, actionable ideas to help you create businesses and careers of excellence and at the same time multiply your influence for the kingdom. I have been a Christian in business for over 30 years, and I have personally and contractually consulted with over 500 different sales organizations. So in these podcasts, I combine the lessons that I have learned with an out-of-the-box experience and perspective on Christianity that you will find challenging. And we put that together to provide you with practical insights and ideas that you can use to live better and lead better. Welcome to the journey. Hi, this is Dave. I got a different kind of podcast today. I'm going to be reflecting and sharing my thoughts about the events of the past couple of weeks. And of course, what I'm talking about specifically is the Charles Kirk assassination and then the resulting memorial service. I'm recording this on Monday, the day after. While I have my opinions, you may have noticed that I try to stay away from the political fray. I'm registered as an independent, and I try to stay that way. And while it has its advantages, it also has some disadvantages. For example, I'm sort of out of the news cycle. I'm out of the fray. I try to not get too involved in it. And as a result, I honestly did not know who Charlie Kirk was. If you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I'd say, I don't know. And I'd never heard of Turning Point, his organization. So I was totally obliviously ignorant. Seeing all the media publicity, that followed his murder, I decided to investigate. And so I studied his website and I reviewed some of his podcasts. I never met him and I never heard him speak. So, I'm basing it on just a small amount of information. But based on that bit of information, my observation was I think he was an intelligent, charismatic man who had a passion for helping young people formulate healthy values and make good decisions. Looks to me like he was also a little bit of a free thinker as well and believed in conversation with people who held different opinions. So with that as background, I'm absolutely appalled by the celebration of his murder and perplexed by the charge that he was hateful and divisive, and therefore it's good that he was murdered. I'm perplexed by that. As an objective observer, I'm puzzled by that sheer lack of human decency those positions reveal. First of all, I don't find anything hateful in what he had to say, although I haven't heard it all. So maybe there's little bits and pieces tucked away somewhere. But that's not the point I want to make. The point I want to make is what is going on that people feel it's okay to say, yeah, I'm glad he was murdered. So I have three possible explanations. Number one, the people who charge someone else as hateful and divisive are merely revealing their own nature. Now, I've been in business for over 40 years, and I've interacted with tens of thousands of people in seminars and speaking engagements, and along the way, I've learned a lot. And one lesson I've learned is this. When someone demeans someone else's character, they say more about themselves than they do about the target of their rhetoric. People, and the reason for that, it's not just hate, it's a lot of things. People project their own character onto others. So liars think everyone else is lying. Thieves expect everyone else to have a larcenous heart. Manipulators think everyone is manipulating them. And so it goes. What happens is we project our own character traits onto others. Therefore, hateful people charge others with being hateful. I suppose it's a trait of human nature to assume that everyone thinks the way we do. Perhaps psychologists have some insight on that. Regardless, this is one of the lessons I've learned, and I think it applies to some people here. The phenomenon has been around since people have inhabited the planet, certainly not new. You may recall that Jesus said, I'm going to quote Jesus here, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye?" How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there was a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you'll see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. So it could be that all those people saying Kirk was divisive and hateful are really just showing their own hateful nature. Well, that's one possibility. Here's another possibility. And, more and more I am involved with helping people think better, and so I'm very sensitive to that. So my second possibility is that, some people just don't think very well. And they have reacted to spurious internet claims without any due diligence. So I saw a great example here. So I live in Sarasota, Florida, and one of our neighbors, I suppose, Stephen King, is a great example. Now, he lives in Sarasota, and I'm talking about Stephen King, the author. Following the murder, he posted that Mr. Cook, quote, advocated stoning gay people, end quote. Now, when Stephen King was shown the truth, he apologized for his lapse in judgment and said it won't happen again. And honestly, I applaud him for recognizing his lapse in judgment. It is what I would expect of an educated and intelligent person. There's something called confirmation bias, which basically holds that people search for things that will support their previous agenda instead of objectively considering some issue. Politics, of course, on both sides are rampant with it. People search for things that can be twisted to support their agenda, whether or not the item actually does. So they look for things to confirm what they previously believed without regard to the actual meaning of that item. Greatest example of this is, of course, the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, who was crucified by a mob of inflamed people because he challenged their beliefs. And this in spite of the miracles and all the people that he touched. He challenged their beliefs, and they couldn't stand it. I'm reminded of a Paul Simon lyric from the song The Boxer, quote, a man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest. I suspect that many of those who claim he was hateful are merely hearing what they want to hear, confirm their previous position regardless of the veracity of the item. That's a lapse in judgment and an indication of poor thinking. And then 3, here's the third possibility. And I still remember my high school speech class. That's amazing to me. It's a long time ago. But we were studying persuasive techniques, and one technique went something like this, quote, if you cannot refute a person's arguments, attack the person. So it's the option of last resort for those who are unable to refute someone's positions. Now, what I've seen from Charlie Kirk is that he was really strong and detailed in the defense of his positions. I suspect that many people just could not refute them. And so, therefore, they can't refute the person's arguments, attack the person. We see it all the time in politics, my goodness. From what I understand, Mr. Kirk advocated free speech and invited many to debates. Many of those who are unable to refute the strength of his argument may have defaulted to attack the person as a frustrated last resort. Regardless of the motivation, the callousness of the comments represent a low point in our society. As a country we have developed for 250 years, I would hope that we would be better than that. Now, having said that, I have to reflect on the event yesterday. Again, I'm recording this on the Monday after the memorial for Charlie Cook. I've seen a lot in my lifetime. I remember the moment when I heard, for example, that JFK was assassinated. Sitting in high school class, the announcement came over the PA system. I watched the Vietnam War and all the protests, including the Kent State shooting of 4 students. I was witness to the Watergate mess, the trip to the moon, Woodstock. I've seen a lot. I watched the political machinations of both sides and watched as the Republicans and Democrats hold on power ebbs and flows. But on Sunday, I saw something that honestly I have never seen before. At the end of the event, I said to my wife, this is one of the most significant events in our lifetime. Now, put that in the class. JFK, Vietnam, etc., etc. What I saw yesterday is one of the most significant events in our lifetime. And it was the memorial for Charlie Kirk, but it was what happened at the memorial. Now, I confessed just in the first part of this that I did not know who Charlie Kirk was. And on Sunday, again, I have to confess, I was more interested in watching the football game than a memorial service. But my wife wanted to watch it, at least a little bit of it, and so I sat down with her and watched. We were both glued to the TV for the next 5.5 hours. So many things were just attractive. First were the people. Somewhere between 70,000 and 200,000. I just saw somebody being pretty sure it was 90,000. But regardless, people came from all over. One man came from Ireland to be there, and I suspect there were others from around the world. So let's say 90,000 people. That's an event of incredible proportions. And at first, there were speakers who gave maybe 10, 15-minute eulogies and testimonials and, reflect on their experience with Charlie Kirk. And it started out with his friends and coworkers. And frankly, I was, as was my wife, we were very impressed with these people. They were almost young, intelligent, attractive, and passionate. Now, let me give you a little perspective. I've been a consultant for over 30 years, and in that time, I've worked with over 500 different organizations. I've never seen a group of people like this in any of those organizations. This was exceptional. These people were exceptional. And I couldn't help but think, wow, for the first time in a long time, I'm optimistic about the future of this country. We have people like this being involved. Well, they talked about this being a turning point in the American story, and they vowed to continue the work that Charlie began. And you know what? I believed them. And then there was a gradual shift in the people who were speaking. The friends and co-workers, I think, went first, and then there were members of the federal administration. I don't know if you saw this. Everyone was calling for a return to Christ. Some recounting the whole gospel story. Others were just advocating bringing God into our lives. I'm talking about Marco Rubio, Peter Hegseth, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, Vice President Vance. That's just a tiny portion. I mean, there must have been 24 federal national figures imploring people to return to Christ. I've never seen anything like it. This is not a Billy Graham crusade. This is a memorial. And I was impressed with their Christian testimony. I have this idea that God sprinkles people like salt. He says we're salt. He sprinkles them around in different places and positions where he wants them. And I believe that this administration has been sprinkled, just sprinkled, and is saltier than any I could have possibly imagined. And then, of course, you would expect Erica's comments, his widow, to be powerful and emotional, and of course they were. In a world that calls for hatred and violence, she forgave her husband's murderer. In addition to the reflections on Charlie's life and work, there were two other themes. If I were to say, were there themes to the conversation? Yes. So Charlie was, of course, the theme. Jesus Christ had a role in the conversation, at least as big or maybe bigger than Charlie. And the idea of a turning point, that this moment in time represented a turning point for the country. So those of us who've been praying for a revival in this country, for a return back to God, this event felt like an answer to that prayer. When the history of this time is written, this event will have a prominent part, and that's why I believe this will be one of the most significant events of my lifetime, because it foreshadowed a turning point. Okay. Hey, if you'd like to get all of my content free, eventually I'm going to have all my content on a Substack page. So, all my blog posts and podcasts and articles and videos and all that stuff. So I'll leave a link. Sign up and get it free. Okay. That's it. We're done. Bye bye.